Dionysius and the tragic worldview. Most people think tragedy is something you avoid, but the ancient Greeks thought it was the only way to understand life. And here's what's wild. They might have been right. Take a look at everyone today who's obsessed with happy endings, positive thinking, and making everything seem fair and safe. On the contrary, there's an ancient wisdom that swears the opposite. It says life is fundamentally tragic, that suffering is inevitable, and that the people who accept this brutal truth are actually the ones who live most fully. So don't think of this as some depressing philosophy from thousands of years ago. This is the secret foundation of every single right-wing thinker we're going to talk about later on in this series. It's the simple idea that optimism is a lie, that decline is natural, and only those who can embrace darkness can truly see the light. The God who drove people mad. Let me tell you about Dionysius. He wasn't just a party god that you think you know from college mythology classes. The real Dionysius, the god of madness, ecstasy, and truth that was so raw it destroyed people's minds. We need to look at ancient Greece. You're probably envisioning the clean marble statues and rational philosophy that you learned about in college. But I want you to picture something darker, wilder, and more dangerous. Deep in the mountains, away from the civilized cities, people would gather for the Dionysiac mysteries. They'd drink wine, danced until they collapsed, and tear animals apart with their bare hands. But in those moments of complete madness, they'd see something that sober, rational people could never understand. Sometimes they'd see life as it really is. See, they would say everyone else gets the sanitized version, where everything works out in the end. Picture the Disney version, where good always triumphs over evil. But the real version, they say, is where heroes die young, where civilizations crumble, where everything you love eventually turns to dust. Somehow, seeing this truth, really seeing it, made them more alive than all the comfortable people hiding in their safe, reasonable cities. So, this is what the Greeks called the Dionysiac principle. The acceptance that existence is fundamentally chaotic, violent, and tragic. And it's the complete opposite of what they called the Apollonian principle, the need for order, reason, and beautiful illusions that make life bearable, the birth of tragedy. Now here's where this gets interesting. The Greeks philosophized about this stuff, yes, but more so, they turned it into their art. Their tragic theater wasn't entertainment like our movies today. It was an experience, a religious experience. For them, it was a way of confronting the darkest truths about human existence in a controlled setting. Think about the greatest Greek tragedies. Oedipus unknowingly kills his father and marries his own mother, then gouges out his own eyes when he discovers the truth. Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter to win a war, then gets murdered by his wife in revenge. Antigone chooses death over destroying her family's honor. These aren't stories about people overcoming their problems and living happily ever after. These are stories about people trapped by fate, destroyed by their own natures, and crushed by forces beyond their control. Brutal. Yet, the Greeks watched these plays and felt elevated, purified, more human somehow. Why? Because maybe tragedy taught them something that all our modern self-help and positive psychology can't. That maybe suffering is what gives life meaning. Maybe that nobility comes not from avoiding pain, but comes from facing it with courage and dignity. So here's what the tragic worldview really means, and why it matters for everything we're going to talk about later on in this series. We know that most people today believe in progress. They think things are generally getting better, and that we can solve our problems through reason and technology and good inventions. The tragic worldview says that's all nonsense. It says that civilizations rise and fall, cultures bloom and decay, that heroes are flawed, and their flaws will eventually destroy them. You can't chalk this up to pessimism, it's more like realism. And accepting this reality doesn't make you weak or depressed. Somehow it makes you strong. Think about it like this. If you believe things are always getting better, what happens when they start getting worse? You might panic. You might look for someone to blame. You might demand that someone fix it. You can't handle the reality that maybe decline is just natural. It's amoral. But If you start with the assumption that everything eventually falls apart, you're not going to be shocked when it happens. You're going to be prepared. Then you can focus on what really matters, not preventing the inevitable decline, but living with honor and nobility while it happens. This is why the Greeks celebrated heroes who died young in battle over kings who lived long, comfortable lives. This is why they thought the most beautiful stories were tragedies, not comedies, and definitely not rom-coms. They understood something that we've somehow forgotten, that how you face your inevitable doom reveals who you really are. But the Greeks did take this even further. Beyond the public tragedies that everyone could see, there were some mystery religions, secret ceremonies where people were initiated into deeper truths about existence. Allegedly. The Eleusinian mysteries, the Dionysiac cults, the Orphic traditions. We don't know exactly what happened in these ceremonies because the initiates were sworn to secrecy on pain of death. But we do know this. They came out transformed. They lost their fear of death. They saw through the comfortable lies that kept ordinary people happy and distracted. These mystery religions somehow taught that visible reality, the world of politics and shopping and social media drama, is just the surface. Underneath is something deeper, darker, and more real. Most people live their entire lives without ever glimpsing this deeper reality. They're born, they consume, they reproduce, sometimes, and they die. They never understand what any of it means. But a few people, the initiated, the elect, the ones who can handle the truth, they see through the veil. And what they see isn't pretty. It's not uplifting or inspiring or politically correct. But it's true. Maybe. And that truth, even that terrible truth, is more valuable than beautiful lies. So, you might be wondering what any of this has to do with modern politics or even right-wing philosophy. I'll give you the connection. Every single thinker we're going to discuss in this series starts from this tragic foundation. They all reject the modern belief in inevitable progress. They all see decline as natural and cyclical rather than a problem to be solved. They also all believe that most people can't handle the truth about human nature, and thus they need noble lies to function, like we talked about with Plato. And they all think that real wisdom comes from accepting dark truths rather than pursuing comfortable illusions. So when Spengler talks about the decline of the West, he's channeling this ancient tragic wisdom. When Evola writes about the revolt against the modern world, he's drawing on these mystery traditions. And when modern dissidents talk about the collapse of Western civilization, or Western countries, or demographic collapse, they're not being pessimistic. They're being realistic in a way that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. The tragic worldview is really what circumscribes right-wing thinking and separates it from everything else. It's truly unique. Liberals believe progress happens through reason and reform. Right-wing thinkers, they believe progress is an illusion, and that wisdom comes from understanding and accepting the eternal patterns of rise and decline. One of the deep secrets that connects ancient tragedy to modern right-wing thought is the idea we mentioned that history doesn't just progress forward in a straight line towards some utopian future. Instead, it moves in cycles. Civilizations rise, decline, reach their peak, and then collapse. Then new civilizations emerge from the ruins and the whole process starts over again. This isn't a bug in the system. It is the system. It's how the universe works, they say. Trying to stop these cycles is like trying to prevent winter from following autumn. You couldn't do it. And attempting to do it will only make the eventual crash worse. It's not worth your time. The tragic hero understands this. He knows he's going to lose in the end. His civilization's going to fall, and his values are going to be forgotten. That his children are going to live in a darker world than he did. But he fights anyway. Not because he thinks he can win, but because fighting with honor and nobility is what makes him human. This is the foundation that everything else is built on. This acceptance of tragedy, this embrace of difficult truths, and this rejection of comfortable lies about human nature and historical progress. It's what made the ancient Greeks different from anyone else around them. And it's what makes right-wing thinkers different from the modern world. So here we are, 2,500 years later, and we're facing the same choice the ancient Greeks had. Do we believe the comfortable lies, the blue pill, that everyone is equal, that progress is inevitable, that we can solve all our problems with enough education and good intentions? Or do we accept the tragic truth that inequality is natural, that decline is cyclical, and that nobility comes from how we face our inevitable defeat and our fight against it. Most people today choose the lies. You can't blame them. They have to. The truth is too hard to bear. But some people, in every generation, choose differently. They choose to see clearly, even when clear vision brings them pain. You can choose to live authentically, even when authenticity is very uncomfortable. These people will choose the tragic wisdom of the ancient world over the shallow optimism of the modern one. And that choice, that fundamental choice between comfortable illusion and difficult truth, that's what this entire series is really about. Next time, we're going to see how one man took this tragic wisdom and used it to build the foundation of rational philosophy, all while secretly preserving the aristocratic insights that modern democracy tries so hard to forget. Thank you.